Boo, bitches, it's me!
Phineas and Ferb had 8 Halloween episodes across its original 7-year run, including 2 double-length specials and 1 quadruple-length 44-minute special. The show put its whole for Bussy into celebrating this holiday as much as possible. In anticipation of the recently announced 5th season revival that's coming out next year, I wanted to revisit the first 4 seasons' Halloween specials and use them as little time capsules to track the evolution of the series from 2007 to 2014. The first Halloween episode, the show's first holiday episode in general, aired on October 3rd, 2008. A double-length episode called One Good Scare Ought to Do It.
Phineas and Ferb have a spooky idea.
Isabella has been cursed with hiccups.
Can their haunted house scare the hiccups out of her? New episode next Friday at 8:30, 7:30 Central, part of Wiz-Tober on Disney Channel.
When Isabella develops the hiccups, Phineas is determined to cure them by building a giant haunted house and scaring them out of her. This episode is a certified suburb classic, with many of the most iconic lines and moments stemming directly from it.
These little creeps have destroyed our backyard, leaving this ugly mess in its place.
That wasn't very nice, Candace.
The kids' inventions were front and center during the early years of the show. They were the bulk of the story, so much of the episode takes place inside the house as they gather all of the recurring neighborhood kids, including Buford, who's slowly shifting into more of an ally than a rival at this point, to make it as scary as possible. Candace, meanwhile, is thwarted in her efforts to talk to Jeremy by his psychotic little sister, Susie.
You say you want your mom, but you really want Jeremy. Isn't that right?
Susie was a really prominent character from the early years, the show completely abandoned by the end. She has only a couple non-speaking cameos in the entire 4th season, for instance, no lines. But this was her at her prime, acting as this terrifying gremlin out to sabotage Candace at every turn.
I am, and always will be, Jeremy's favorite girl.
I think they mined her shtick and their dynamic for all the narrative potential it really had though, so it's not a huge loss. Something I noticed as a kid is that Susie's dog terrorizes Candace here. Then, there's a later episode where the dog terrorizes Candace again, and the episode claims it's her first time meeting her.
What's this?
Yeah, that's Susie's dog. That's weird. Susie trained her so well.
I see.
But she clearly already knows this dog. And it can't take place before this episode because this one is Candace's introduction to Susie. So Candace apparently has the memory of a goldfish. Meanwhile, Perry has tracked Doofenshmirtz to an abandoned island. This was the first time we actually heard the full Perry the Platypus theme song, and it was hype as hell. Keep in mind that I was watching Phineas and Ferb from the beginning. I was on the ground floor during the very first week of Ferbuary.
Part of Phineas and Ferbuary.
Doofenshmirtz's house sitting the lair of his evil mentor, Dr. Destructicon.
He was just captured in the midst of his latest plan to set fire to the sun.
I loved how Doofenshmirtz had a different evil lair in almost every episode of the show's first year. They were so creative and imaginative before they just stagnated into only showing Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated. When I was a freshman in high school, I met series co-creator Dan Povenmire, and I asked him why they stopped doing so many lairs, and he was basically like, we got lazy. He kind of laughed about it. Then he drew me a beak suit centered around Ferb. Look how ugly I was. Now I'm a thirst trap. I've never mentioned this before, but Dan Povenmire's sister, Tiana, was a local artist in the town I grew up in. She was the inspiration for Aunt Tiana from the wedding episode. She went to my best friend's church. I met her a couple times. And like several times a year during holidays especially, I'd see Dan tweet out photos and I'd be like, I know where that is. I know that place. The most infamous example that sticks in my mind forever. His sister was a vendor at the holiday market. My sister was also a vendor at the holiday market. One time when I was a sophomore, Kayla was like, Ian, can you please come help me set up? I'm just kind of overwhelmed right now. And I was like, I don't want to, and I just didn't. And then, maybe an hour or two later, I'm scrolling Twitter, and Dan Povenmire's at the holiday market. Look at Dan helping his sister, and look at me not helping mine. I'm going to hell. I had no car at the time, no way to get there. It was instant karma, and Dan Povenmire has no clue that this formative childhood memory of mine revolved around him entirely.
Kevin asked a favor of me to prevent them from discovering his hidden lair and all its secrets. Would I please set fire to the sun? And I was like, dude, you really gotta let that one go. It's a ball of fire. It makes no sense.
Doofenshmirtz builds a descent evaporator to blow up the base with Perry inside, but Perry puts his foot over the key to the escape jet and forces Doofenshmirtz to release him before he can escape.
If I set you free, you'll give me the keys, right? Oh, for Pete's sake, why didn't you say that like an hour ago?
Phineas and Ferb was genuinely so clever, and the humor excelled because it was just dumb, but in a spectacularly impressive way. In a way where I'm actively blown away and overjoyed that they came up with stuff this stupid.
Let's just make sure I didn't forget anything in my haste. Got my old basketball, the lamp, the Christmas lights, the umbrella, Perry the platypus, the decent evaporator, my golf... Perry the platypus! The decent evaporator! My golf clubs! I don't even play golf!
This episode highlights, I don't know if it's a problem per se, but shines a spotlight on the fact that Doofenshmirtz and Perry's antics are infinitely more entertaining than anything that goes on with Phineas, Ferb, or Candace. I thought that passionately as a kid, I still do. The jokes hit harder, and by the end of the show, they never ran out of Doofenshmirtz and Nator ideas while they were simultaneously scraping the very bottom of the barrel for stuff for Phineas and Ferb to do. All story threads converge when Candace enters the haunted house as Phineas amps up the scare factor. Here she discovers the giant floating baby head in its very first appearance.
What did you think the scariest thing was?
Definitely the giant floating baby head.
Yeah. Yeah, where did that come from?
As she tries to grab Mom to bust the boys, the haunted house gets snagged on some Christmas lights from Doofenshmirtz's jet, which pulls it up into the air, leading to this iconic interaction. It crashes back down, giving Candace a second chance. Unfortunately, it has the descent evaporator attached.
It's back! I told you! It's returned.
Oh, excuse me, I forgot my satchel.
Goodbye, Candace.
Let's admire the absolute gall of Isabella to say what she's about to say here.
This day was ruined and I didn't even get to hang out with Jeremy.
Sorry, but you know, it was the best day for me.
This episode's really special to me. I just thought it was awesome as a kid, and I'm really nostalgic for it. When I was in 1st or 2nd grade, there was this recess aide at my elementary school called Miss Coco, I think. I don't know if that was her actual last name or just something she had kids call her, but I spent like the whole 15-minute recess explaining the entire plot of this episode, beat by beat. I would have to imagine in an extremely inefficient manner, and she just stood there and listened as if she cared. Probably a couple weeks later, she passed away during an open heart surgery, and the entire elementary school just had like a day or two where we all learned about grief and read these like little children's books about it. I don't remember what she looked like, what she sounded like, anything about her personality. I just remember all the positive emotions I associated with her because she was like my favorite recess aide, and I was really, really sad when she passed away. So I'll always associate this episode with her, which is a weird way to remember this person who surely didn't care about what happened in this Phineas and Ferb episode. One good scare ought to do it is an easy S tier entry. We're gonna do a tier list because that's what we do on here on YouTube. What are you gonna do? Stop me? I don't think you can. You're just a little bitch. You're a soggy little moist boy. You can't do anything. We're doing a tier list. And of course, you could be a woman as well. We don't discriminate here at my channel. Everyone's a soggy wet bitch compared to me. I've got nothing but respect for all the non-binary soggy wet bitches out there. And yet, despite its high placement, I don't even think it's the best Halloween special. Let's keep going. The Monster of Phineas-n-Ferbenstein aired next, 2 weeks later on October 17th, 2008.
Behold, Phineas and Ferbenstein.
I know what we're gonna do today.
Marvel at their mechanical mammalian monstrosity.
It's alive! Alive! And it's really big.
New episode Friday at 8:30, 7:30 Central, part of Wiztober on Disney Channel.
Rained in during a summer storm, Grandma and Grandpa Fletcher decide to tell the story of Ferb's ancestor Ferbgore, as he and his best friend Dr. Phineasstein create a giant platypus monster to submit in a best monster contest, because monsters casually roaming the earth is just a normal aspect of the history of the Phineas and Ferb universe.
How big, Grandpa?
Bigger than a refrigerator, but smaller than a really big refrigerator.
Meanwhile, Doofenshmirtz and Perry are locked inside due to the same storm, and Doofenshmirtz tells the B-plot of the exact same story about his ancestor, Dr. Jekyll Doofenshmirtz, who built a concoctioninator to turn himself into a giant monster to warrant the ire of the local angry mob. Constance tries to bust her brothers to the mob, which is so funny to me.
I'm telling Mob.
Didn't you tell us last week that they created a two-headed cow?
We're wasting time!
This episode also has the most cliche line ever, and it does it unironically.
He's right behind me, isn't he?
Yeah.
Doofenshmirtz turns himself into a monster and terrorizes the town. Then Ding Dong ditches the wrong person, or should I say platypus, who ferociously chases him.
I'm finally cured of my irrational fear that a giant platypus will see me in my underpants. It's even worse than I imagined.
God, this show is so funny. All stories converge at the Monster Ball, where Perry eats Doofenshmirtz before he can drink a refill of the monster liquid, which Candace drinks by accident and gets chased off by the angry mob. The fact that both of these stories lined up so perfectly when told by separate narrators really implies that all of this actually happened. This episode doesn't end with a guitar riff, which actually is bizarre. It feels like an accident.
Platypus monsters are the only monsters to lay eggs.
The Monster of Phineas-n-Ferbenstein is one of the few episodes with a designated Wikipedia page, and that's because it was submitted for consideration for a Primetime Emmy, and actually received the nomination, its only competition being the SpongeBob episode Dear Vikings. This episode was director Zach Montref's first Emmy nomination. However, there was a bit of a controversy. The entire Emmy ceremony passed, and this award just straight up wasn't given out. The Phineas and Ferb team and the SpongeBob team learned later that the Academy simply wasn't going to present the award to either of them, but didn't notify them beforehand. There's really no more information available about what the hell happened. In this 2009 interview, Zach really hopes he'll get another go at an Emmy, and sadly, to this day, he still hasn't. He got screwed over. Zach Montref, if you're listening, I prefer yours. Granted, I haven't rewatched that SpongeBob one since I was like 7. A tier. Phineas and Ferb's second season didn't have any Halloween episodes, but it came back 3 years later with 2 11-minute segments that aired on October 7th, 2011.
We've got Frankenstein, Count Dracula, and some kind of Igor.
Disney Channel's Monster Monday is bringing some major magic.
This is so crazy! Wait, did you bring your wand?
Mythical mutants.
Welcome
to the mutant farm. And monster moves.
It's going to be awesome!
Scream along with your favorite haunting Halloween episodes.
I'm a zombie.
Would you please rate my performance on how much I scared you?
The first of which was That's the Spirit, a rare episode that took place outside the show's usual summer timeline and actually occurred on Halloween night. These kids' Halloween costumes are just reused models from the Best Monster contest. The gang's trick-or-treating together, but that's when they discover a young boy named Russell who needs help investigating his haunted house. His house itself is haunted. It's not a haunted house. It is a haunted house, but it's like a house, and it just happens to... The group agrees to bust some ghosts, as Candace puts it. Inside, they find themselves chased by monsters and creatures and survive by the skin of their teeth. I really enjoy how vibrant and saturated this episode's color direction is. It's really different from what the show normally does. I don't normally throw around slurs like this, but I've just gotta say it. It is a bit spooky. I'm a big fan. The gang eventually pulls a Scooby-Doo and realize the entire operation was an elaborate setup by Russell's parents, who like to scare trick-or-treaters every Halloween. Every Halloween, you know, they just like to commit an actual crime and deeply traumatize children. It's fun. One day in middle school, I learned about the song, I'm the very model of a modern Major General.
I am the very model of a modern Major General.
And that's when it clicked with me, that growing up was just going to be a long sequence of finally understanding things Phineas and Ferb referenced.
I am the very model of a modern Major Monogram.
The same is true for episode's special guest stars. There's a lot of people I did not know about as a kid who I absolutely know now. For example, Russell's dad is played by Michael Douglas.
Aren't you a little young to be hunting ghosts? That guy looks like broccoli.
While Russell is voiced by Michael's son, Dylan.
Hiding in the leaves makes me feel warm and secure.
And I was thinking, like, hold on, Dylan actually sounds like a child. Did Michael Douglas have a young child just a mere 10 years ago? And I looked it up, and yes, he did. Dylan was born in 2000, when Michael Douglas was about 60. Michael's 3 children were born in 1971, and then 2000, and then 2003. And you know what? It's chill. Michael can do what he wants, but I'm just imagine. Can you imagine your dad being like grandpa aged? My grandpa literally celebrated his 80th birthday in July. Michael Douglas is 1 year younger, while Dylan is just 1 year older than I am. Look at this sick ass drip that Dylan is wearing. That's badass. That's incredible. He looks like a Descendants character. He looks like a Tumblr sexy man who you'd exclusively see in 2D hyper-stylized fan art. And yet here he stands in real life. In the B story, Doofenshmirtz has chained himself up. And this is such an underrated, amazing backstory no one ever really talks about.
It all started a couple of days ago when I declared war on grass. It's not important why exactly. So I got myself a cow, the natural predator of grass. What I needed was a cow that was motivated not by hunger, but by a powerful hatred of grass. So I invented the Mind Transferinator.
Doofenshmirtz finds himself transforming into a were-cow during full moons and embarking on a massive rampage, which catches the attention of an angry mob roaming Danville.
I say we get him!
Yeah! Wait a minute. You brought a torch on our date?
Hello, pitchfork! He could be hiding behind any one of these holes!
Now Perry has to keep him out of trouble. And it really doesn't get a resolution. The episode just ends with Doofenshmirtz still a were-cow, still being chased by an angry mob. I remember my mom used to watch like every single episode of the show with me when they came out because she was like, oh, I just really like it. Now I'm honestly wondering, looking back, if she just watched it to like make sure it was appropriate. She had to ensure what I was watching wasn't naughty content show run by the devil. But either way, I remember during this whole were-cow story, she just kept mumbling like, this is stupid. That's so dumb. I don't think it was for any religious reason. I think for whatever reason, this was the farthest her suspension of disbelief was willing to stretch. Everything else that's happened in the show, totally chill with her, but she just drew the line at Doofenshmirtz becoming a cow during full moons. Now, this doesn't seem to be a common opinion, but I rewatched the whole series in 2020 ahead of Candace Against the Universe, and I think it clearly and visibly peaked with its first season. The show feels less inspired in its later years, like they were caught up in the ringer of writing and producing 50 episodes a year, and they weren't able to spend as much time smoothing over the writing that wasn't coming as naturally to them as it used to. That is to say, the comedic hit ratio noticeably decreased.
Sorry, that's a trade secret.
Wow.
I think a lot of that comes from the fact that Vincent Martella, Alison Stoner, and Thomas Brody Sangster were all actual children in the beginning, whereas they're kind of noticeably not in season 4. In season 4, they had to artificially pitch Isabella's voice up, which is noticeable if you listen for it.
Phineas, but all I really want for my birthday...
But again, I know I'm largely alone in this opinion, which I think is whack because it's very noticeable and pronounced to me. Last weekend, I was hanging out with Jonathan of the YouTube channel Second Dimension over in Florida. We went to Universal together. We had a rollicking gay time, but in a heterosexual way. At one point, we were driving to an escape room. It was him, me, and his wife. And we were talking about Phineas and Ferb because of course we fucking were. And at one point I was like, you know, I don't think the rest of the show was as good as season 1. I think it trailed down in quality. And I was met by just like dead silence. And I was like, oh shit, they don't like that opinion. Because Jonathan prefers season 4. Brooke prefers season 2 and 3. And so after like, I don't know, 10 seconds, Brooke's like, I don't really think so. I think the show was getting better. I'm just a little pussy, so I backed out. I was like, no, yeah, you talked me into it. You're probably right, you know what? I take it back, bitches. Now that I'm alone, you can't stop me. Season 1 was the peak, and you didn't actually change my mind. I lied to get out of that situation. Politics, religion, and Phineas and Ferb hot takes are the 3 things you should never, ever bring up in a polite civil conversation. Things will get ugly and awkward. Anyway, go to the Bureau escape rooms if you're ever in Orlando. It's amazing. Do the one with the puppet. The Loch Ness Monster one was kind of ass, but do the one with the puppet, it was awesome. So while the Werecow stuff was very excellent to me despite my mother's trepidations, this episode just doesn't have that many funny jokes overall that hit. The A-plot really doesn't have much in terms of entertainment value. It's a C tier. There's no specific thing this episode does poorly, but I've just always been really lukewarm on it. Airing that exact same night was The Curse of Candace, which feels wrong to me because I swear in my heart of hearts, this one was way earlier in season 2, but it just factually was not. It was late season 3. Right alongside That's the Spirit. The episode opens with Candace and Stacy watching a Twilight ripoff in the theater. Candace gets bit by a bat and starts to worry she's becoming a vampire.
Me? A vampire? Don't be silly, Stacy. It would be cool to have super strength, though. And be able to fly.
Yeah, but you'd never be able to see yourself in a mirror again. How would you put on your makeup?
Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated.
That's the punchline to end the scene. See what I mean? It's like they're just in the first draft dialogue for a lot of the 3rd season. And that may very well have been what they did in the 1st season as well, but the jokes in the 1st season were more inspired and clever, and at this point they're running out of steam. Phineas and Ferb were initially considering recreating the Battle of Danville, which is an insane piece of lore which never gets acknowledged in the show ever again, and then they decided to help their friends out with all their various requests they've come by with today. Candace comes to the backyard, and she discovers in horror that she can levitate, she's invisible, she's hurt by a lamp, but we the audience learn that all of these are just simply the byproduct of Phineas and Ferb's little inventions. Candace doesn't know that. She flees, she goes on the run.
Did Candace just jump over that fence?
You had to take her to the vampire movie, didn't you?
Candace and Jeremy are dating by this point of the show. Jeremy just knows This bitch is insane, and yet he's still into her for some reason. I love how in the Candace Against the Universe movie, Jeremy has more personality in his 5 minutes of screen time than he did in this entire 7-year run of the show.
Here, Stacy, put this on. Jeremy, is this cosplay? Wait, are you live action role playing? Are you LARPing? Stacy, we really have to get out of here.
Doofenshmirtz, meanwhile, has sent a letter to Alka HQ, which they don't bother opening or reading. Then at Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated.
Dear Perry the Platypus, I know Major Monogram will ignore my letter and send you to stop me. That's why you are now trapped. Best wishes, your nemesis, Heinz. Come to think of it, it wouldn't have made much sense until now. It's probably good that you didn't get it earlier.
See, the show does still, hit. His neck is not bad at all, it's just not as consistently good. Also, I love that he knew Perry would land on this exact spot. That's very silly. Doofenshmirtz has built the Gimmelstumpinator, which will turn everything it hits into something reminiscent of Doofenshmirtz's Eastern European home country of Gimmelstump.
I could drive it, just as long as I didn't get a scratch on it. Oh, my dad's gonna kill me.
Why, dude? It's not scratched.
This converts the world into a gothic nightmare all around Candace. 3 out of 4 Halloween episodes so far have involved an angry mob. She comes and begs for Phineas and Ferb's help, but because she must be seen as delusional even when Mom isn't in the episode, the ray has its effect reversed and everything returns to normal before Phineas and Ferb can see it.
Well, now it's scratched.
Phineas realizes exactly what happened and reassures Candace everything will be okay.
Candace, that was just some stuff we made for our friends. You're not a vampire. Look, I'll prove it. See? The sun has absolutely no effect on you. Ferb, we're gonna need a dustpan and some glue.
This whole relatively mid-episode was building to that punchline, and it makes it so much more worth it. It's one of those final bits that's so funny it justifies the whole thing. I adore that. However, it's still a C tier. I mean, that's really just how I'm feeling about it. Halloween episodes returned 2 years later in October of 2013 during the 4th and, at the time, final season. These ones had a modified opening credit sequence with spooky filters and a slightly remixed theme song.
So the annual problem for our generation is finding a good way to spend it.
October 4th saw the release of the 11-minute Druselsteinoween. They spelled Druselstein wrong in the title. There's supposed to be a second S right here.
Phineas and Ferb are back on Disney Channel's Monstober.
Doofus inherited the Druselsteinian castle from his great aunt Hawkenspit, which has a buried treasure hidden deep inside. Perry doesn't battle Doofenshmirtz once again, which seems to happen a lot in the Halloween episode specifically for whatever reason, and they go on a big quest to track it down.
Get away from me, Susan!
That's a reference to season 1's The Ballad of Badbeard.
Susan and Susan! I named them after each other.
His daughter Vanessa uses the castle to throw a big Halloween bash and spend some time with her boyfriend Monty, Major Monogram's son, voiced by Seth Green. This is a story thread the show had been developing very slowly and non-committally for multiple years now. This is the second episode that explicitly takes place on Halloween, but it's not really clear how this and That's the Spirit can coexist in this contrived and often irreconcilable timeline. The most obvious solution is maybe one of them takes place before the summer and one of them takes place after, but that doesn't work because in both of these episodes, they're casually hanging out with Buford, who they don't become friends with until the summer. There really isn't much of a plot here, it's just a bunch of vignettes of the characters hanging out. It's weird that Phineas and Ferb are at this high school party given that they're 8. As the show went on, the kids started acting older. They really did age up and mature, but they were still 8. They play a remix of several previous songs. I always thought it was cringe and try hard. You're not popular music, you're Phineas and Ferb.
Hey, yeah. I got squirrels in the pants. I got squirrels in the pants.
Vanessa looks for an opportunity to dance with Monty, and here's something so weird. In the early show, Ferb had this huge crush on Vanessa. She was the unattainable older girl. Then the show introduced Monty as her love interest, and I always really liked the drama that the show was building as they both struggled to keep their dads in the dark, with Perry and Carl learning the secret as time went on. Ferb, for the first time, sees Monty and Vanessa together, and it's bizarre because he has no reaction. In fact, he sings their love ballad. And I was always like, huh? Like even just a brief, fleeting moment where Ferb blankly stares at them and blinks. It's all it really would have needed to communicate that. But nah, instead he's just getting cocked with a smile on his face. They're so awful. I hate that Ferb and Vanessa end up together. As a child in 7th grade, I thought this was bizarre, and as an adult I can see it's very odd. But Dan Povenmire insists nah, it's chill, I dated a 27-year-old when I was 19. Dan, no! They're gonna flame roast you on Twitter! Dan! That was my fault, by the way, I'm sorry. Anyway, Monogram spawns Monty dancing with Vanessa. But when he marches over, Stacy has swiftly taken his place.
All right, Monty, you've got a lot of experience.
Oh, hello, Mr. Water and Power Guy.
This right here is the only time the show acknowledges the episode where Stacy found out Perry's secret identity. Insane wasted potential that I'm really hoping they explore in the revival. Why the hell was Major Monogram at a high school party on Doofenshmirtz's property? All previous Monty-Vanessa episodes had built off their predecessors. First they meet each other, then they go on a first date and Perry hides them, then Carl spots them as a couple, then Carl blackmails Monty.
What do you want?
I want your father to disown you and adopt me!
Okay, what do you want within reason?
I love Monty because he's the only normal person in this entire show. This is the only one that just kind of treads its wheels and gives us an encounter derivative of previous ones. Monty slinks away, and this is the final time we ever hear about him and Vanessa. And showing that they're still a couple on Halloween after the summer and Monogram still doesn't know always struck me as odd because it meant they could never give this storyline a proper resolution within the show's main timeline itself. If they wanted to wrap this up and reach the dramatic revelation that the series had inevitably been building to, they'd explicitly have to do a time jump episode for it to happen. But with the announcement that season 5 will take place during the next summer, it could actually work again, and I'm crossing my fingers that they wrap this up, because I've been wondering for 10 years what the hell happened. Doofenshmirtz finds the treasure, but almost all of it is taken by taxes. Is he a YouTuber? And lastly, Mom and Dad have this little gag where they're scaring trick-or-treaters to steal all of their candy.
Oh, but wait, don't go away. We have a little surprise for you.
Oh, I do so love Halloween.
We're gonna save a ton of money on candy this year.
And it is so out of character for them. This is weird. They wouldn't do that. What are they doing? This one's just kind of meh. There were so many opportunities to explore the character dynamics the show had going on in its 4th season, and it fumbled the ball with all of them. D tier. The very next day, October 5th, 2013, saw the release of the terrifying Tri-State Trilogy of Terror, which is a double-length episode riffing on The Simpsons' Treehouse of Horror, with 3 story segments depicting oh-so-spooky events narrated by this weird dude in his bookmobile. As such, this is the only Phineas and Ferb episode that was divided into 3 acts, 7-minute segments between commercials, rather than the usual 2-act structure with 11-minute segments.
Is someone there?
On a spine-chilling special monstrous Saturday night of premieres.
Stay away from me!
Lock your doors.
Keep it together, kids. Stay back!
Open your roof.
Bum bum bum! The inexplicable giant floating baby hat!
And hide your platypus.
Oh no! Look!
It's 3 terrifying Tri-State tales of terror.
They're here!
That will leave you screaming for more. A can't miss special all-new half-hour Monster of Phineas and Ferb episode.
In our terrifying Tri-State Trilogy of Terror.
Saturday, October 5th at 8:30, 7:30 Central. Part of a monstrous Saturday night of premiere.
The first story sees Candace recite an incantation which brings her Ducky Momo doll to life. In the second story, Doofenshmirtz summons the giant floating baby head and its only plot-relevant appearance to grant him 3 wishes, which he grossly struggles to use competently. And the final story is about Phineas and Ferb stopping a ferocious army of platypus clones from terrorizing Danville. I'll be honest when I say that I consider this the weakest Halloween special, which makes it a shame because Disney Plus chose this one as the show's representative on the Disney Plus Halloween section. Thousands of people will just choose to watch this one while scrolling that section now, not even knowing that I think it's mid. On a conceptual level, part of the appeal of Treehouse was this opportunity to push boundaries, both narratively and technologically, freed from the show's usual constraints, and be a bit more violent than usual compared to The Simpsons' usual tameness of its golden age. Besides Itchy and Scratchy. Phineas and Ferb's version doesn't do either of these things. I think this episode is the perfect embodiment of the show's general decline in humor. By season 4, I roll my eyes at as many jokes as I laugh at. This one's a better than usual example because I don't think there's anything particularly entertaining here.
So you beat up a bunch of snacks. Big deal.
Except for this line, which is pretty good.
Talk about your undelightful endings. He means delightful, and he means the opposite of that.
Throughout the last 2 seasons of the show, even when I was still an elementary schooler, I would just regularly feel so underwhelmed by episodes of this series. And it doesn't seem like that's a universal experience at all. It seems like most people like season 1 as much as season 4. So many of the jokes are just the characters commenting on the situation they're in and being like, huh, that's weird.
Crackers, go get them! Why do I have 6 boxes of oyster crackers?
Oh no, guys. This is a grape juice box factory.
How
terrifyingly specific.
It gets annoying as a viewer when the show actively makes itself less funny by beating you over the head with, wow, this sure is an unusual and/or specific circumstance. Let's go back to a season 1 episode.
Bigger than a refrigerator, but smaller than a really big refrigerator.
Season 4 would have Candace be like, well, that's not very specific. They always drag the jokes on just a little too long.
Why, dude? It's not scratched.
So much of the humor in these later years is also really basic fourth wall breaks because that stuff was just starting to become mainstream in the early 2010s before Deadpool and Rick and Morty beat it into the ground.
Look, I'm shaking bacon. You like that? It's a callback to something I didn't even hear. In your face, logic.
2 minutes earlier.
Hey, what's shaking, Bacon?
You do realize that bacon does not shake.
Sir Francis Bacon?
I stand corrected.
Why would Baljeet feel the need to say that? They just wanted to build to that punchline and didn't care if the journey to get there felt natural at all. Lastly, the show's later years fell into this habit of obnoxious time-wasting gags. So much of the 4th season is just Doofenshmirtz rambling to himself, and a lot of perfect examples are in this episode.
Yep, I'm ahead. A big old head, Perry the Platypus. That's what I wished for. Where are you going? So what? I don't need your help. That's right. Just walk away, Perry the Platypus. I'll give you the slurp face. Nice, fine. They don't like me in a giant head, huh? Oh, I fixed my nose. Oh.
It's like Dan Povenmire is just doing improv. This doesn't feel like it was in the script at all, and some of these sequences can last like a full minute and 11-minute episodes. This macabre bookmobile guy also just sucks. Like, I want him to shut up.
Kitty! Shut up, Kitty! Everyone should Kitty! You don't have to say Kitty too many times before it stops sounding like a word. Kitty! Kitty! Which is another reason to kitty me! Yeah, back on topic, baby!
Given how much I watched Phineas and Ferb during my formative developmental years, you'd think that my sense of humor would just be whatever Phineas and Ferb was. But for some reason, it's not. And the style of comedy and later years Phineas and Ferb is a type of comedy that's so, like, aggressively not funny to me. It's weird that it came out that way. Phineas and Ferb Season 4 is either funny or painfully unfunny, with very little in between, and that's a problem that only got more pronounced with Candace Against the Universe. The movie was directed by Bob Bowen, an episode director who joined during Milo Murphy's Law, and according to all of the press and interviews from Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh, Bob went out of his way to include as many time-padding gags as he possibly could. It's this endless, unbearable number where the joke itself is that the joke is taking a long time. This door one would have been fine if it was the only one instead of the first of like 20, and it makes me so worried for the revival because Dan and Swampy seem to love these things as much as Bob. Ah! Irving's scenes were cut for time! This episode wasted its guest stars as well. Oliver Chris as Mr. Macabre, David Kocher as Rusty Britches, Baljeet's cowboy guidance counselor, and Alex Hirsch as
Officer Concord, the Juice Time Juice Box Flavor Cup!
Well done, everyone. Let's dance!
I legit think no one at Disney knew that twerking was a sexual dance. They just thought of it like Gangnam Style. They're like, oh, this seems popular with the kids. Let's put it in Phineas and Ferb. Everything about this episode is stupid. The platypus clones are the only concept that I come close to enjoying. I remember they released a book adaptation of this segment a few months before the episode aired, and that was our first glimpse of their designs. They're cool, but just all in all, I'm not a fan of this one. F tier. Granted, F tier by Phineas and Ferb standards is just not funny. It doesn't like dismantle the core values of the show or anything. It's just bleh. Next week, October 11th, 2013, saw the release of Face Your Fear, a story that was promoted as a Halloween episode, but just blatantly isn't one at all.
On an all-new Monster of Phineas-n-Ferb.
Ah! Get away! Get away! Get away! Scram, you flying gerbil!
Doof faces his biggest fear ever. This lair.
Dad? Vanessa, get out of there! There's a huge bat on the loose!
Will never be the same.
No!
Sink your teeth into a Friday night feast full of fear. An all-new Monster of Phineas and Ferb. Friday at 9:15, 8:15 Central on Disney Channel.
In the Yay story, Buford's mom needs him to get injured less often, so Phineas and Ferb create a foam roller derby called Foam Town. Meanwhile, Candace tries to use a satellite to spy on the boys, and only Doof's story has anything relevant to the theme. First off, this is an amazing layer entrance. These still went hard by the end. Now, Doofenshmirtz, after watching a horror movie, has decided to create a make things larger-inator to grow a bat and make it his large minion. Then he remembers that he's deathly afraid of bats, and he hides, and it grows, and it grabs him, and it flies around, it destroys Foam Town, Perry defeats it, the bat looks like Doofenshmirtz's Uncle Narth Elliot. The end. I don't have anything else to say about this one. It's just not a particularly notable episode in and of itself, nor a Halloween special. It's apparently only classified as a Halloween episode because it has a bat in it, and I guess a spider earlier. Good for it. Mom has a degree in thermodynamics.
I'm flattered you'd be interested in our humble facility, considering your background in astrophysics.
Oh yeah, listen, that's kind of a secret.
F tier. Whatever. Just because it's in the F tier doesn't mean there's nothing of value. Keep in mind, that can still be up to like 50%. That's pretty good. With less than a year left of the show's initial run, Phineas and Ferb pumped out one final Halloween special, Night of the Living Pharmacists. And I'd just like to say, this is the best one.
The tri-state area is in chaos tonight as thousands of repulsive, mindless pharmacists run rampant all over Danville.
A night of total terror. With nowhere to run. And nowhere to hide. Now.
They're all over town, and according to this, if one touches you, you become one of them.
Ew! We're doomed.
Every way out.
It's locked.
Is another dead end.
Game over, Ben! We're doomed!
A Monstober special event.
What's the emergency?
Pharmacists! Pharmacists!
Phineas and Ferb.
Agent P, Oka has fallen. I repeat, Oka has.
Night.
If we don't make it, Danville falls.
Of the living.
Here they come!
Pharmacists.
We're not gonna make it.
New Phineas and Ferb, Saturday at 8 on Disney Channel.
After production of the 4th season ended with At Your Age, Disney execs were like, so, season 5, and Dan and Swampy and the team, they were tired, they were eepy, and they didn't want to be done yet, but they didn't want to commit to a whole nother season. So their solution was to make 5 44-minute specials to round out the series, which were aired intermittently throughout the last year and a half of the show's broadcast. They spent so much time and energy making these feel like events, and they ended the show's run on an unbelievably high note. Except for the Alka Files, which was ass. Jonathan interviewed Dan once, and even Dan was like, nah bro, that was all Swampy's idea. I didn't want to do that, I'm innocent. Like, they know it sucked. Never forget that Joe Biden caused an ice age.
We're sorry, we had them, but the vice president left the tub on the roof of the car, and we,
No pretzels, no deal. You have doomed the earth to perpetual winter.
My mom was so mad that they put Obama in Phineas and Ferb. Night of the Living Pharmacists stuck out to me as a kid because it looked good. Visually, it was ridiculously high quality. I can now identify precisely why. It's because the characters are drawn with two-tone shading and illuminated with Toon Boom rim lights for the majority of the runtime, which was not the case in the regular series. In addition, this opening shot, which amazed me as a kid, is hyper smooth because it's cel-shaded 3D, which I couldn't tell as a child. The specials use Doofenshmirtz build a repulsinator that he'll fire at his brother Roger during the unveiling of Danville's new water tower. However, the ray's effect turned out to be contagious and caused a zombie apocalypse of Doofenshmirtz lookalikes, because Doofenshmirtz is repulsive.
Oh, he's gonna be repulsive now! I get it, repulsive, I see. That's just the universe making a joke at my expense.
As Phineas and Ferb progressed, the show started retreading comedy beats, and this is a prime example because this exact joke has already been made twice before with the Uglyinator and the De-Handsomeinator.
Oh no! Now I'm ugly! Oh, I get it. Hardy ha.
The Repulsinator is the best application though, because the execution of the joke is the most brutal and it leads to this phenomenal special. By the end of the show, Phineas and Ferb's inventions were rarely the subject of the stories themselves, but just plot devices to serve some other narrative purpose. Roller Coaster was about the roller coaster. Backyard Beach was about the backyard beach. They were the names of the episodes. But by season 4, we get episodes like Bully Bust, where the core of the story is about Candace betting Buford that he cannot keep Phineas and Ferb's invention from disappearing. that really only left a couple of minutes to actually showcase what this invention is, so they just make some random simple concept like tooth amusement park, and they do 1 or 2 gags with it, and then that's really all. Today's invention is a lot like the latter. It's just a rubberization bouncing ray, and everyone jumps around and has a wonderful time before realizing that rubberization insulates against the contagion. It's just one small story component. Isabella here is also trying to earn her emotional bravery patch by confessing her feelings to Phineas. Pro tip, the special's only 43 minutes if you skip the hop right to it song, which all sane people do. The tone and atmosphere of this one is incredible. As a 7th grader who'd recently discovered Clone Wars and wanted things to be edgy and epic, this was everything I could have possibly wanted from Phineas and Ferb. There's a moment where the score whips out the dubstep, and that's all middle school me needed, man. There's also this awesome sequence where the virus has only partially mutated the Alka agents, and Perry has to fight all of them off to give Phineas and Ferb cover to escape. All the moments where he acts as Phineas's silent guardian make me so happy. I love their relationship, and I wish Phineas could know how much Perry cares about him. But tragically, Phineas never will. I think the jokes in general are just far funnier than a lot of what the 4th season traditionally offered in these specials.
Lots of me, lots of me. I used to be Carl.
Although there's still a lot of monotonous time wasters as well. In a C-plot, Candace wants to fit in as a cool kid so she watches horror movies at a party with Vanessa's goth friends. There really isn't much to say about it. It winds up being more of an afterthought and just an arbitrary thing for Candace to do, so she's not left out. A far more enjoyable subplot is a little running gag. Stacy is setting up a DVD player to watch a horror movie marathon, and she's completely oblivious to the apocalypse raging outside her window as she lucks her way out of infection multiple times. This is my favorite thing Stacy ever did in this series. She is so much entertaining on her own when she's not acting as a foil for Candace. Stacy is like Candace if she was peak. Stray Thoughts speedrun. They played the full-length Quirky Worky song here, which they were only rarely doing anymore by the end of the show. I was always very happy when it showed up. It's a nostalgic piece of music. Back in the day, storyboard artists would casually release their storyboard work for episodes well before they aired, even if they were spoilers, because I don't think they thought any kids would be able to find the artist's portfolio sites. But I remember seeing this whole layer briefing with Monogram in the hot tub almost a year before the episode dropped. The link just loads infinitely when you try to click on it now, so I don't think the page works anymore. There is this super prominent shot where Perry's arm is tan instead of cyan. Like, they colored it with Doofenshmirtz's skin tone, and it looks like Perry's arm got skinned.
Welcome to my startle space. I wanted a panic room, but it was just prohibitively expensive.
Doofenshmirtz says he can't afford a panic room, which confirms that the Flynn Fleshers are a moderately wealthy family. A long time ago, well before this episode came out, someone who worked on the show posted a still of this scene to Twitter, except it was photographed from a monitor and had the time codes on it. I'm 90% sure Dan himself posted it. I tried to scroll back and find it, but I couldn't get that far. But in the process, I discovered that Dan likes his own tweets, which made me laugh. I'm glad you like them, Dan. But I'm bringing this up because back then, we didn't know where this image was from, and the Wikia had untitled Doofenshmirtz and Perry episode on the list of upcoming entries in the final stretch of the series. And I remember feeling super sad when this sequence with the bear and the helicopter finally happened, because it meant there was one less Phineas and Ferb episode to look forward to. It was swiftly removed from the episode list after this episode finished airing. Eventually, the core characters of the special meet up in Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, albeit Perry is unconscious in a helicopter because I guess the writers didn't want to bother with him reacting to his host family meeting Doofenshmirtz again. They devise a plan to spray the Pharmacists with water in order to reverse their contagion.
But we've got to find a way to get everyone in Danville wet at once.
Show them an image of Dylan Douglas.
When does it ever rain here?
Episode 122A, The Monster of Phineas-n-Ferbenstein. After years of the show firmly establishing that Phineas and Ferb cannot know Doofenshmirtz, this episode finally relents and allows them to actually know each other. Going into Milo Murphy's Law and Candace Against the Universe, Phineas and Ferb remember exactly who Doofenshmirtz is.
It's Vanessa's dad, you remember him.
The main cast starts to fall one by one. Candace and Vanessa are converted into zombies. Perry is too. You can always tell the episode bangs when they bring in D. Bradley Baker to make a new noise. Phineas and Isabella are the final survivors after Ferb sacrifices himself during an action set piece on the water tower. Here, Isabella confesses her feelings to Phineas, and it's so cringe, man, but I guess it's like accurate how their age demographic would talk.
I like you!
I like you too, Isabella.
No, I mean, I like you.
Wow.
I remember my dad was in the room when I was watching this, and he was just like scoffing at this dialogue, and honestly, I kind of was too. I was like embarrassed that my dad had to see this. I thought it was just underwhelming, because as a little child, I loved Phineas and Isabella together. I don't really care that much about them now. They're like graham crackers. They're like living saltines. They have no chemistry at all. And they're weirdly shaped, ugly children. But at the time, I thought this was so underwhelming compared to the similar interaction that already happened in the movie across the second dimension. According to storyboard artist Aliki Graft, Phineas was supposed to kiss her after her confession, but they decided against it because it was too much. And I had thought at the time that would have been better, and that would have been like a nice parallel to how it went in the movie. There, she kisses him, here he kisses her, perfectly balanced as all things should be. But anyway, Isabella saves the day. All of their memories have been wiped with the last like 30 minutes, because of course they were, and that's it.
I remember building the vortex sprayer, but after that, I've got no clue.
Another deleted scene here that was posted in storyboard form shows an extended interaction between Phineas and Isabella after they saved the water tower thing. And it was cut for time, I guess, because we can't have shit in Detroit.
I've got no clue.
The only thing that sticks out in my brain is your patch. I don't know what happened, but I do know that I'll hang on to this patch for the rest of my life.
Oh, Phineas. I've got no clue.
Me neither, but whatever happened, it worked.
In the end, we learned the entire episode was apparently a horror movie Stacy was watching, and none of it really happened. Which makes it weird that Phineas and Ferb recognized Doofenshmirtz in Milo Murphy's Law and Candace Against the Universe, because this episode didn't happen. According to co-writer Joshua Pruitt, there was this extended, deleted, alternate ending which shows how all the Doofenshmirtz zombies outside the walls of Danville got saved. I imagine that was there in place of Stacy realizing it was all fictional. And I like the ending they went with, but I'm curious what this alternate one is, because he's been like subtly hinting at it for 8 years. Do I need to say more? That's an S tier episode. I loved that one. And now I'll eagerly await more Halloween episodes in the 5th season. While editing, I discovered there's actually an episode list for the first portion of the 5th season. And I assumed it was fake at first, but I checked with Jonathan, and apparently this publication has accurately reported all of the upcoming Hamster and Gretel episodes, and several things on Dan's TikToks do verify these titles.
The Tropey McTropeface song that you guys came up with gives legitimacy to something that did not deserve it.
Jonathan is very in tune with the Phineas and Ferb rumor mills, as you might guess from the fact that this is a shirt he wore in public. But on the other hand, this girl at the bureau complimented his shirt and not mine, so maybe he's onto something. Anyway, the point is, I'm actually excited. Being able to look at upcoming Phineas and Ferb episode titles brought over such an insane, specific wave of nostalgia. And even though I have my trepidations and concerns that the 5th season probably won't recapture the magic of the first show, given how Milo Murphy's Law and Hamster and Gretel have been, I'm still gonna eagerly watch it with a shit-eating grin on my face. I cannot wait. Place your bets now. Is this a Stacy episode or is this a Vanessa episode? Because remember, she joined Alka in the series finale. So that's all. I've gotten a lot of comments being like, oh, do a Phineas and Ferb retrospective. Dude, I have so much to say about Phineas and Ferb that that video would be like 36 hours long. Like and subscribe and shit. That could... See you later. Woo.